Okay, and then that's why Socrates accepts the punishment, essentially, is that same thing that Socrates, in earlier books he's written, or not written because he didn't write books, but in earlier sort of works, earlier ideas, is that he absolutely thinks that if you want to live in a society, in a community, you do have to some extent, acknowledge that that community as a whole, or the people in it, that you have to follow their laws, because if you don't follow the laws, then you have anarchy, you don't have society. And he believes that what is really important is harmony in the state, for instance. No one is going to be happy if there's complete chaos. And that's why Socrates says, look, I've tried to persuade people that in this case I am right and some of the laws are wrong, but no one believes me, and I accept that, and that's why I am going to accept my punishment and I'm going to die. Okay, and his friend comes to him and says, well, no, why don't you live? You can go and live somewhere else. That you're right, and some of us know that you're right. And he says no, because essentially I failed to convince people of that, and I need to obey the laws. And that's so his ultimate allegiance then is still to the community, not just to himself. And that text is called Crito, by the way, where his friend comes to him. And then Hannah Arendt also says that it is possible, or she suggests that it's possible, that even if you personally object, then you might still be complicit with something because you're not stopping it, you're not organizing against it. You could, if you disagree with taxes, you could feasibly go and find an uninhabited island and live on it and not pay tax, but you'd still be complicit with the tax that you thought was wrong because you're not organizing and trying to persuade other people that it's wrong. Okay, so we've looked at some complicated stuff, but very interesting stuff here. And in terms of thinking about the question, when is compliance complicity? I think Socrates would clearly say that fine people are often compliant. They might not be complicit. They might be unaware. However, for Socrates, that's not always a good enough excuse, because we should stop and we should make ourselves aware. We should constantly be asking, well, where does that come from? Why do I believe that? So you have to examine your life. And therefore, Socrates would probably say, no, it's not a good enough excuse to say you're not aware of that problem, because you should have made yourself aware of it. And then we looked that ultimately Socrates, similarly to Arendt, ultimately does think that it's not enough to just go on your own and say, well, I'm right and I know I'm right and I'm going to stop doing that. And that excuses you from being complicit, because we are social beings, we live in communities, we live with families, and therefore really your sort of moral obligation is to try and persuade other people to see what you see. And if you can't do that, then you might be wrong. You might not be right. You might be barking up the wrong tree.